Hey guys, we are back with another Find Your Film episode. This is a different one. Obviously, we're doing our director spotlight episode. We do this once every 2 weeks. Our last spotlight was Satoshi Kon with the help of Bruce Perky. Thank you, Bruce Perky, for that wonderful Satoshi Kon episode. We've covered a lot of filmmakers. We started off with Eric Holmes doing William Friedkin. We started off with William Friedkin. We also went to Mario Bava, Dario Argento, Joseph H. Lewis. Oh, and I forgot the Be Natural, the untold story of Elise Guy Blaché, directed by Pamela B. Green. That was a really important episode for all of us. That was such a wonderful documentary. And now we are, just because we need to get this out of the way, our spotlight for this episode is Brian De Palma. It is not going to be an all-encompassing episode because Brian De Palma has a way of just making his way into every episode. I don't know, almost every episode due to my just mentioning De Palma at the drop of a hat. So I like to say this is a director spotlight, but more of just a continuation of what we've been doing with Find Your Film. There's a lot of really interesting threads with our podcast feed. Recently Bruce Perky has really injected a lot of animation stuff into the proceedings. Eric Holmes, he's all over the place in a great way because he's taught me how to start hunting down movies on YouTube. Some interesting movies on YouTube. We just finished taping our last episode, and The Man Who Wouldn't Die, right? Eric Holmes, is that The Man Who Wouldn't Die?
Yeah.
Movie from 1942. He went into my backyard. I thought I was a 40s, 50s, 60s guy, and he just stole that movie away. It's on YouTube. I can't wait to watch it. So a lot of really interesting stuff for Find Your Film. This episode is Brian De Palma. I picked Brian De Palma. He's my favorite director. I'm gonna really I don't know what to say because I have so much to say about Brian De Palma. We are going to not do the obvious picks for this spotlight. We're not doing Untouchables, not doing Scarface, not even doing something really cool like The Phantom of the Paradise. I wanted to pick two movies. My personal favorite De Palma film, Raising Cain. Okay, and then I'm gonna have a lot of additions to why this is my favorite De Palma film. So Raising Cain will be our first film we're gonna spotlight. The second film we're gonna spotlight is Femme Fatale. Actually, I might want to go with Femme Fatale first and then end on Raising Cain. So those are our two picks. The reason why I picked both those films is these movies were written and directed by Brian De Palma. These are Brian De Palma screenplays made at a very important juncture during his creative journey. So before we get to those films, I wanted to ask you, Bruce and Eric, just a boilerplate or a standard. Why do you think why is Brian De Palma a special filmmaker for you? What do you think are his greatest strengths? Eric Holmes, let's start with you. Just overall thoughts on Brian De Palma, because you've been watching a lot of his stuff lately.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I've always liked Brian De Palma, but then since doing this with you guys, I've been seeing a lot more of his movies lately, and I don't know. I just kind of like he's got a really cool style, but his style is not intrusive. I don't think it just kind of looks like a Brian De Palma movie, and it works with the stories that he tells. We talk about the split diopter, the split screen. You mentioned in a previous episode of the kind of the Rube Goldberg kind of machinations he sets up and then pays off, and he builds it, and he doesn't just build that throughout the movie as most movies do, but like he builds that suspense throughout individual scenes. So the scenes are actually really memorable. And yeah, I've always liked them. And then the more I get into them, the more I like them. I'm not quite where you are. I don't think anyone could be, but I'm getting pretty close because, I don't know if you know this. This Brian De Palma guy, he's pretty good. He's pretty good.
Bruce, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts in preparation for this podcast about De Palma. And I think someone said that with De Palma, whether it's a boring scene supposedly on the page or a big set piece, he always tries to infuse his sequences with a level of dynamism. What is that? Are those one of the benchmarks? One of the reasons why you love De Palma, or is it another road for you?
Uh, Definitely that's part of it. Because there's always those De Palma isms or whatever you want to say, those kind of the set pieces, just like Eric just talked about, that kind of are his trademarks that you always kind of look for. I was actually thinking about it as you were saying it. I was thinking about my own journey with De Palma, and that is, I look back and go, before I knew De Palma as a director, and I think we do this a lot of movies, you'll just watch movies and then later on you find out that was the same director. Oh, that was the same guy who did that. That kind of experience. And I think back on De Palma, and what I always think of first is that he has always made throughout his career movies that I just wanted to see. And often the movies I wanted to see that were De Palma's, I wanted to see the movie before I knew they were De Palma in a lot of cases. And so I think there's a combination with him that he just makes crowd-pleasing movies. He makes entertaining movies, like right out of the gate. And then the rest of it is kind of icing on the cake. And my journey with him, and we'll talk a little more about this too, but my journey is that I've kind of seen him as this entertaining pieces, but then when I go back and watch some of these again, they hit me on a whole different level, because I kind of don't have to worry about the story anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of know the story. I kind of know the basic structure, and I kind of let myself kind of notice the craft a little bit more. And I guess I have a different take, and we'll talk about it as we go, but he's a really interesting director.
Well, what's interesting to add to that, Bruce, as much as I love Brian De Palma, I've only seen two of his movies in theaters where I was absolutely blown away.
Mm-hmm.
First one, Casualties of War, which I was thinking of covering for this one, but I decided not to. But that movie blew me away. I knew that was a masterpiece first time I saw that, for me. Okay. Second film was actually maybe before Casualties, was The Untouchables. You're talking about entertaining movies. You could hate Brian De Palma. You could hate Kevin Costner, maybe even Sean Connery. You could put The Untouchables on anytime and it will entertain. Mammoth screenplay, De Palma sort of reined in within the framework of that story. Just a perfect film. But all of the other De Palma films I've seen on screen, first initial reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm highly disappointed. I felt that way about Carlito's Way. I felt the first time I saw it, I go, yeah, really cool. Not as good as Scarface. Years later, one of my favorite De Palma films. And Mission to Mars, I saw that with a buddy. And I thought this was an F. I gave that movie an F minus. I thought it was the worst piece of what I saw. Time, for me, has been kind to it. For me, personally, I actually like Mission to Mars a lot more than I did before. So to your point, Bruce, I think, and I don't know, Eric, I don't know if you feel this way too. Does your opinion of a Brian De Palma movie sort of change the more you see it? Because, or does your initial impression of De Palma usually stick? Because you just reviewed Dress to Kill for our previous episode. So
yeah, I guess it changes for the better. I just like him more the more I watch his movies. But I've never really been down on him. I've had that experience that you mentioned where you see something like the first time I saw Magnolia, I was like, this fucking movie sucks, and now it's one of my favorites. Like, there's a bunch of movies like that where you watch them and it's just like the worst thing ever, and then for some reason you go back to it and it just, wow, must have been drunk that day I saw that or something. I don't know what, but I never really got that with De Palma. I've always just kind of liked his movies. Although now I'm watching a lot of his older ones that with The Fury and I guess recently Dress to Kill and Femme Fatale and recently I'm watching those now and I'm like, wow, he's got some. I need to dig more into De Palma because I've known his hits throughout the years, but I never really dug deep into them. And the deeper I'm digging. So there's that.
I wanted to bring up one other thing. I think something else that would be helpful for people, especially if they come into this or they're listening to this and they go like, I've seen a few of these things, but I don't really know. I think that weirdly, you wouldn't expect this about De Palma because you think of a lot of his movies as being pretty accessible. But I think that you have to almost look at like you would David Lynch. So like you could tell people like, hey, watch The Straight Story or watch The Elephant Man. But you have to warn people if they're going to watch the real David Lynch movies. And I think it's almost the same thing in a sneaky way with De Palma. You can tell them like, oh, you've seen Carrie, or you've seen, like you said, The Untouchables, you've seen Scarface. Great. But if you're going to tell them to go watch Raising Cain or Blowout or some of the real De Palma, like you said, written and directed kind of movies, it's almost like you have to know what his kind of his world is, like how he presents things, because it is different. And you have to be prepared for that, or you have to see it again to kind of get that. I don't know how to describe it. I'm sure you have a feel for that too, Greg.
Yeah, well, before we get into these movies, with De Palma, one of the things to understand about his work is he has his one side, like we all know, for the studios, and they're still very interesting movies. But then he has his really obsessive personality disorder, sexual obsession. I love Hitchcock films. So they're split into two. But the thing with De Palma is we mentioned this in the previous episode. He was really passionate and obsessed with the JFK assassination. And that really calls out to what the movie Blowout was about, right? So you're going to have so many different elements with the JFK assassination, and you actually transpose that kind of storytelling and reportage into his own movies. Then you're going to understand why, whether it's Carlito's Way, Casualties of War, or even Raising Cain, there are so many elements involved. And it's a lot, especially something like Raising Cain, which we're going to talk about right now. It's a lot more complex than one would imagine. And also, when he grew up, I was listening to the podcast today. I thought it was actually his mother years ago, but one of the podcasters said when he was young, De Palma actually was following his father, only to discover that his father, I actually thought it was his mother, but the podcast said today it was his father. He was following his father and realized that his father was actually cheating. So a lot of the following stuff that you get, the point of view shots where you see the camera is actually trained on a certain person, and you're having that voyeuristic sort of wonder also. That comes from De Palma as a youth, actually. That comes from a traumatic experience from his youth. So the voyeuristic part of De Palma may have a sexual, prurient kind of take to it, but there's also a very personal take to why he does all these voyeuristic POV shots. And on top of that, the most important part regarding why he uses some of these shots, split diopter, split screen, POV shots, is because it's interesting cinema. It's just a way to expand the visual language. And sometimes, like Eric, you were saying, sometimes people think split diopters are cheesy, and different strokes for different folks. And I still love split screen. I'm sure some people think it's overused. Do you guys think any of his shots are? Do you think his visual language is dated now today, or only he could use it, or do you think there's still his stuff can still be applied to today's language, or could still be used? Do you think?
Well, you would have to use it. He uses it because it's in his toolbox, and he's, they're De Palma isms, and so he knows how to use them well. I think if like a new filmmaker or someone that hasn't used those sort of things a lot, it's like anything. You would have to use it in a way that makes sense for the story you're trying to tell. And if you're using it just for flash, then it'll probably come off as cheesy, I think. But I think De Palma, he likes those and uses them a lot. And in doing so, he knows where to use them. So I think it works for him. And like I mentioned before, if there's not a split diopter shot, we've been robbed.
Well, and there's a point where goes from being a technique, which it is, and a characteristic, which it is, to being like a voice, where it's literally his style. And the different, like Eric says, the difference is that someone else does it, it looks like copying, or kind of the difference of like a hipster starting a metal band, or watching Motorhead do it now. Well, okay, one group has done that for 35 years and that's their style. And another group is trying to ape that style. And it's like, well, you better be really damn good if you're going to ape that style or have a reason to do it, because otherwise it comes across as like copying. So to me, that's the difference. Yeah, he can do it. That's his thing, man. And he does it, like Eric says, he does it really well. And he has an obsessive eye that also makes it earned, because when he uses it very intentionally, you know.
Yeah, well, let's start off with our Femme Fatale Raising Cain. I lied because De Palma usually says the camera lies 24 frames per second. I just lied by saying we're going to start with Raising Cain. And then I said, let's start with Femme Fatale. I'm going to have my reasons. Femme Fatale, made in 2002. By this time in 2002, 2001, 2002, came out 2002, De Palma was living in Paris after the financial failure of Mission to Mars. By the way, he was not the original director of Mission to Mars. It was Gore Verbinski, and De Palma took over that job. So that was ultimately not it was directed by De Palma, but he took it over the project. So anyways, he left the US after that failure, moved to Paris, and decided, you know what? I love the culture here. They really understand. I love people in Paris. They love jazz, and they love De Palma, and they love Jerry Lewis. I may move there one of these days, guys, and learn the language. But in Paris, he decided to shoot Femme Fatale. And I'm going to give a 20-second plot synopsis. Rebecca Romain Stamos, she plays a person. She's part of a jewelry heist that takes place in, I'm assuming, a film festival, maybe the Cannes Film Festival. It starts off with a 20-minute sequence at a film festival. It's a jewelry heist spearheaded by the main character, Rebecca Romain Stamos. She plays this woman named Lori. Okay. Now, Lori, after this 20-minute jewelry heist, it becomes a completely different movie, because she does a double cross, and she is hunted down by a couple of mercenaries, her fellow co-conspirators. And what happens is the only way she can escape is through a simple twist of fate, when she becomes mistaken for another woman. And that other woman's distraught parents believes that she, Lori, who's actually a criminal, is actually maybe their long lost or long dead daughter, or recently dead daughter. Who knows? It's a weird movie. And Rebecca Romain Stamos, as Lori, says, oh, well, they mistake me for this French girl named Lily. Maybe I should play Lily for a second. And that is as simple as I'm going to get with Femme Fatale. Antonio Banderas plays a photographer. We're talking about voyeuristic elements. He plays a photographer who, for some reason, just loves, he's like a paparazzi type of photographer, but he's off in his own apartment just shooting just different random people for money. And he's also, for some reason, obsessed with a building across the street, and he keeps on shooting that. And that is a weird subplot of the movie, which we're going to get into. I can't wait to talk to you guys about that. What is that subplot? But anyways, that is the main plot behind Femme Fatale. Eric Holmes, this was not a Criterion release. Okay?
No, it wasn't. No,
I apologize for not correcting you. I did not correct you because A, I'm a coward, and B, wishful thinking, because I want Femme Fatale to actually be on a Criterion release. Your impressions after watching this, because I'm assuming this is the first time you have seen Femme Fatale.
Yeah. This was, well, my first impression was, Rebecca Romain Stamos and Antonio Banderas is in this, because I thought I got this confused with Dress to Kill, obviously. But all right, I guess we'll start with that opening heist.
Yes,
that was fantastic. That opening heist. So, I guess to set it up, is the woman that Rebecca Romain Stamos is seducing, air quotes, seducing. She's basically wearing the her whole dress is basically just giant gold jewelry, something
worth $10 million.
Diamonds.
Yeah. And so,
what's there is of it?
Yeah, so she seduces the woman wearing the jewelry dress that they're going to steal. And they go in the bathroom and they start making out, and she starts taking off bits of her jewelry clothes, and she's fine with it. She's like, "Oh, this is so hot," and I agree. And then she drops it, and there's the guy, her partner, in the other bathroom stall, and he has the
like a replica version of it.
yeah, like a replica of what she's wearing. So as she drops it, sets it down, he grabs it and puts a replica, and then she takes off another piece, grabs that, puts a replica, and you want to talk about like top shelf De Palma like suspense that, and I love good heist movies like that. Rafifi's another good one. Heat is like a heist movie, but it's more of an action movie. That this is like the heist movie where they go, they set up the framework of everything that's going on, the geography, the players, the what's happening, and this is just a master class in suspense and heist movie. And that's just like the first 10 minutes,
15, 20 minutes. It seems, yeah.
And that also reminds me. I noticed this and thought about the beginning of Mission Impossible, and it's like he started taking his ending sequences and putting them at the beginning. I mean, I feel like some of these like really complicated, like all these moving parts happening at once. I feel like that happened at the beginning of Mission Impossible, which I haven't seen forever, but if I remember correctly. And this is very reminiscent of that too. But this is super good. You're right. It's like, and it has great. So it has all the things you expect, right? All the interlocking parts and all the suspense because, oh no, the guy's going to come into the room. And then he adds such humorous elements too, like the cat. I loved that. Yeah, the whole thing with the cat. There's just a lot of really great stuff to like in that sequence.
Well, that's the opening sequence of Femme Fatale. So what's cool about you guys talking about it is you can just watch that 15 to 20 minute sequence and call it a day. If you're a De Palma fan and say, okay, that's cool. What did you guys think about what happened afterwards? Which is really hard to explain. Let's just say that it's sort of maybe a dream within a dream. It's a wish fulfillment. It is a life unlived. There's so many different elements. Were you guys still on that Femme Fatale train after the heist?
The part I remember after that is actually the bit with Antonio Banderas in the building with the split screen, but that doesn't happen till you got to refresh me. What's the scene that happens
before that? She goes back to the hotel. The guy finds her. Something happens to her violently.
Yeah.
And then she wakes up in a bathtub. Shortly after that, not too long after that, something else happens there too. But that's kind of the transition. And then she sees someone that looks a lot like her, and some things happen, and then we kind of like Greg was talking about. You remember that part, kind of that thing happening, and then she meets the guy on a plane, and
she meets the guy on a plane played by Peter Coyote. And then there's Greg Henry. He makes Greg Henry. If you're a De Palma fan, you know Greg Henry as one of the main guys in Body Double from 1984.
Yep.
We are going to mention Greg Henry later on in this episode with Raising Cain. Greg Henry has a very small role in Femme Fatale. He's sort of a security guard to this ambassador who played by Peter Coyote. Yeah.
I was going to say, to me, the stuff after the heist is prime true De Palma. When I say true De Palma, I mean the stuff where he gets dreamy and weird and obsessive and like just obsessive. I don't know how to describe it. He gets really obsessive about like relationships that are twisted and well, we'll get into it, but I don't know how to say it, but you see it in Raising Cain, you see it in Blowout, you see it in a lot of these movies where there is an overheated, I said this before, overheated, right? There's an overheated logic, and there's just, I feel like that's where the filmmaker is really showing his true, what he's really interested in, I think. Other than technique, I think that's thematically the stuff he's really interested in. I don't know what you think, Greg. But
I think it's just one of his most ambitious films, right off the top, because it's his screenplay, a lot of people will say a lot of people say he's a Hitchcock copycat, which is
Yeah.
something that really shouldn't. I mean, he continues the language of Hitchcock, but with this movie, though it had Hitchcockian elements, it's a different type of De Palma movie because of some of the structural elements, the
Yes.
idea of what the subconscious is, the idea of living an alternate life, and I think it's one of his braver movies, just storytelling wise, because this movie could have really gone south. Okay, the only thing though, my only strike in this movie, and I don't know how you guys feel. There's the sex club sequence where the photographer played by Antonio Banderas, he's embroiled in this whole intrigue situation
Yeah.
with Laurie, played by Rebecca Romain Stamos, or Rebecca Romain. That's what she was Rebecca Romain Stamos back in the day, but she's Rebecca Romain now. But back in the day, she was Rebecca Romain Stamos. By the way, her husband at the time, John Stamos, played the voice who's talking to Antonio Banderas in Femme Fatale on the business, the person who's giving him the assignment. That's John Stamos's voice. But that sex club sequence with Antonio Banderas and Rebecca Romain Stamos did not work for me. That when I'm rewatching it years later after 2002, I just thought that was a big drag. That about maybe 5 to 10 minutes of that movie, I just did not like. Did that work for you guys?
You're talking about when she was what was the guy's name? She was seducing the one guy at the sex club.
Yeah.
And then they go back and then he's like, "Sorry, bud, didn't mean to bang your girlfriend." And he's like, "No."
Yeah, did that work for you, Eric? Did that work?
Yeah, it was weird, but I liked it.
Okay, cool.
Because it looked like I was worried that it was gonna, because this is De Palma and he's done this. I was worried it was gonna turn into like a weird rape scene, and it kind of was, but she was like all for it, because she was.
Yeah.
She has pretty much 100% agency in everything that she does. Like 100%. Nothing that her character does is on accident. So, once I realized it wasn't going to go there, I was a little more looser with it. And then, it was just.
Well, when you'd seen what she did,
it was definitely strange.
I was going to say, when you saw what she did in the previous stuff where you thought that Antonio Banderas was more in control than he really was, that I think that informs that later scene. I would say the only thing that was weird about that scene, I liked what the point of the scene was, but I thought all of the stuff upstairs in the bar was super weird because I was like, where's this bar where there's like 100 heterosexual leather dudes and that's it? And one lady. It was like, what kind of where does this exist?
It's flash forward 7 years. 7 years later, it's a screening in one of our cities where we live in. It's what that is that bar is a cinematics bar. It's a screening. It's a cinematic screening, just all guys and one girl, and we're not going to mention who the woman is. So,
but yeah, that part I thought was a little weird. But I mean, I always chalk that up to that. There's always a level of heightened, not total reality in these movies. So I kind of go with that a little more.
Okay, cool. So I was tough. So you guys thought that scene was okay. That you're okay with that scene in the movie.
Plus, there's a question of reality in this movie kind of throughout. So there is kind of a question on like what is really occurring and how much of it is. I mean, I know it's kind of a trope, like is it real or is it their imagination? But there is some of that going on in here, or alternate versions. There's something going on there with that. I don't want to really get too hard detail of it, but that's an element.
I also get the sense that like she's constantly trying to seduce Antonio Banderas. And he's just not having any of it. Like, so with that scene in the dance club, I got that as like her trying to maybe make him jealous or kind of, do something like that. And, he knows what's up. He knows who she is at this point. And so he's just like, you're not going to get me that. And I was thinking, and maybe it's just how Antonio Banderas comes out. I thought maybe his character was gay, but maybe not. I'm not sure. He's
but he played up
sexually ambiguous. Definitely,
he played different characters too. They showed him doing that. Like he'd answer the phone sometimes to like dodge people. So it seemed like he would, part of his kind of paparazzi past was
Yeah.
to kind of play up different sorts of characters to get where he wanted to get. And that was the whole thing when he kind of got in the door with her the first time and he thought he was in control of the situation and he was kind of playing that whole role. So I kind of took that as him thinking he was like really kind of a master of character, so.
I ended up, after rewatching this, I ended up really enjoying this film. I thought I would love it as much as I did back in 2002. I still think this is a very, very good De Palma film. Loved watching Brian De Palma work in Paris and feeling free and letting all of his imagination kind of go wild. The sequence, what we're talking about, where Antonio Banderas is shooting that building. Do you guys? Was that a little bit nonsensical to you? What like were you thinking like what is that about? Did you guys?
That was a really cool shot.
Okay, cool.
Or a cool shot, cool use of split screen, where the one side just stays on them. That's the one you're talking about, and the other one backs up.
Yeah,
and then,
that sequence. But I'm also talking about the end, sort of the end credits. This is not going to spoil much when you actually see that building and you see different type
that mural
parts.
thing he's making. You're talking about,
and it shoots different parts of the day. Yeah, and he's cutting up images. And
I wondered if that was kind of a weird play on. I mean, you talk about Hitchcock, a little play on Rear Window, but also maybe a play on Blow Up. I thought it might have been a little play on Blow Up.
And like, what is reality? What is not? Right? Maybe.
And kind of, he's like taking all these little bits and pieces and creating this scene, this moment in time. But because of what happens in the movie, that moment in time actually changes. So I think it's kind of a visual representation of that. Now, why his character was making that as his, I don't know, quote masterpiece. I don't know that exactly, but
that is weird. And if it can be a confusing movie if you just go in with it with half your brain there, because it has a really interesting twist. De Palma had his older brother Bart De Palma stay with him in Paris, and so Bart's job was to actually shoot that entire sequence, work on that art piece. So I thought that was a really cool section of Femme Fatale. I definitely recommend Femme Fatale. It is a pure De Palma film. It has the requisite ending set pieces. So the set piece at the end, to me it's not a classic one like as Carlito's Way or the middle sequence in Casualties of War, but I still thought those visual set pieces really worked. They were very strong with Femme Fatale. Eric Holmes, your final thoughts on Femme Fatale? Do you recommend it? How does that rank as far as your De Palma experience?
I would say the opening is definitely the highlight of the movie, and actually kind of the ending too, where don't have to get into it, but on the bridge where kind of everything kind of comes to a head.
Right.
It's got a really memorable opening, really memorable ending, some bits in the middle. But yeah, there was definitely kind of a couple parts where, well, you mentioned it, and I'm like, huh? Oh yeah, I guess that was in the movie. But then like that it's such a stupid shot, but the split screen with Antonio Banderas looking and the one side goes back. I really like that shot quite a bit. But then so the camera goes back and turns and it sees those two ladies just sitting there, and you still hear them on the phone. And now I don't like it. You see the camera, it's like, oh, something's going on. And then it cuts to the two girls, and then I'm like, I don't understand what that was for. And then they do it again at the end, and they cut back, and it's her. It's Rebecca Romain. I'm like, oh, okay, they replayed the thing, and now it's got context to it.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of great things in this, and then there's some kind of forgettable things, but overall, yeah, I would recommend it.
Cool.
I think that this also has good rewatchability because if you like it, there's some puzzle elements to it that you might want to go back and kind of rewatch. So, for example, like you're saying, where you have multiple versions of the same shot, but there are variations on it and kind of decoding that. For example, one little thing I was obsessed with, and I don't really know exactly what it means, but I kind of have an idea, but I really liked it, was just that there's a scene with a fish tank that's overflowing. And then later the fish tank's not overflowing. And just
Very cool.
little things like that made me go like, oh, wait, is that because wait, what there's a reason for that, so I'm sure there's a ton of stuff like that in this movie. So if you dig it the first time around, I think you can get value out of it
Yeah,
the next time around.
there was a fish tank, and also the bat, like pretty much any
Water
container with water on it was just
Yep.
like right to the top and overflowing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was another example, because they played that with her, started with her in the closet looking at the girl about to shoot herself, and then they rewind it and then played it back at the end with back further, and yeah, you just get whole different context on similar scenes, and those are always fun.
There's a lot of rewatchabilities. I just wish he didn't use the words deja vu a little bit too much.
Yeah, that was a little obvious.
Yeah, it's like, dude, seriously, if you're a fisherman and you open up the refrigerator and you come out and it says red herring on the fish wrap, it's just like,
Yeah.
Ooh, I wonder if the audience member is going to get this. But
to me, once again, that's what I'm going to say. When you're in like prime De Palma like this,
yeah,
he does that. He is totally free to go over the top, and we're about to go into over the top.
Oh, right,
and
right.
So that's part of one of those things I was saying. Like when you go into a full David Lynch, you kind of have to know what kind of weird world you're getting into. Here, when you get into full De Palma, you got to know like this is a different level of reality, and that's kind of a given. So you kind of accept those where you might not accept them in another movie, because it's kind of this heightened weird world he creates.
And listeners, if you've never seen Femme Fatale, there's a nice little homage to Double Indemnity at the beginning. Eric Holmes was mentioning how awesome the first act is. So it's a little bit of a film noir as well. And I think, without giving too much away at the ending, it's one of his most optimistic films when it comes to what he's trying to say. And that is weird for me to realize, this is De Palma being very optimistic, just like he was with Mission to Mars. So, Femme Fatale is now available on Amazon Prime Video. Wait, it is not available on Amazon Prime Video. Bruce, can you tell the story to our listeners? What the F happened with Femme Fatale?
I live a life where I rarely get to watch a movie from beginning to end. So I watched the first half. I went to work. I came back to watch the second half. First of all, the first half, the subtitles didn't work, so I couldn't read the French. So I was already frustrated, but I was enjoying it. And then I got back home and I went to go put it on. And said, not available anymore. I'm like, what happened? So in like 5 hours, it had become unavailable, or 6 hours. And I was like, Greg. And he was like, hey, I got a copy, link I can send you, and we watch the rest of it. So it was helpful.
Yeah, I thought to myself, I thought it was on Amazon Prime Video forever. Just several hours ago, if we finished it, we would have seen it for free. I ended up paying for the movie $7 because I'm De Palma. Oh, Eric Holmes. Yes.
Physical media. And this doesn't happen.
I was actually going to go out and buy it. I was like, okay, I'm going to go out and buy it.
Okay. So you found it. You just found it at your local store. Is that what happened, Eric?
Oh no, I saw it on Amazon, but I saw it before it got taken down. My point is.
Oh, the point is.
My point is, this is a perfect example of why physical media is important.
Yes.
Okay.
For sure.
And this is why important. It's why I'm also an idiot, because in my closet over here, I actually have Femme Fatale on DVD. I was watching. I did not want to go from one room to the other, Eric Holmes, so I decided to actually download, buy a digital copy of Femme Fatale, because I didn't want to traverse from one room to the other. So I do have that physical copy of Femme Fatale. Also, it's out on Warner Archive Collection as well, if, like Eric says, you are into physical media. So Femme Fatale, recommendation for me and Bruce. High recommendation, Bruce, or medium recommendation for you?
I would say high recommendation if you kind of already kind of like and know the De Palma deal.
Okay.
I would say it's not your first entry into De Palma. I think yeah.
Cool.
But if you like De Palma, you already kind of know the deal with him, it's a high recommend.
Okay, and Eric liked the movie, didn't love it like he does The Fury. One of these days we got to do The Fury again, because I love how you were saying how awesome The Fury was. And by the way, Eric Holmes was thinking it might be even better than Carrie. So, and I think Bruce, you were almost co-signing on that too. Maybe, right? Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why not? And I'm gonna have Brian De Palma back you guys up, because he was actually saying in conversation, you make one for yourself, you make one for them. He considered Carrie make one for them. So Maybe the Fury he was making it for himself, and I thought it was him making one for them, but maybe that was actually a personal film. Speaking of which, Eric Holmes, you got to laugh, but speaking of personal films, Raising Cain. Raising Mother Effin' Cain, released in 1992, written and directed by Brian De Palma. I'm going to get to why it's my favorite De Palma film. My caveat is it is definitely not the best Brian De Palma film ever. You have to. I think all of us have been swimming in Brian De Palma waters for the last several weeks. I just really, really dig this movie. I'm just going to start off. Bruce Perky reviewed this a couple weeks ago. I'm just going to go right off with the IMDb plot summary. Here goes. The oncologist wife of a prominent child psychologist suspects her husband has an unhealthy scientific obsession with their child, unaware of what or who is really going on inside his head. So the child psychologist is played by John Lithgow. The oncologist's wife, I had no idea she was an oncologist because I guess she never said in Raising Cain that, hello, I'm an oncologist, but that oncologist is Jenny, played by Lolita Davidovich. Now, Jenny, she loves her husband, Carter, played by John Lithgow, and it's a seemingly happy family. The only problem is Jenny has a problem with her husband, Carter, spending a little bit too much time with their daughter. He's really obsessed with her 2-year-old daughter. She's thinking maybe he's going to take her daughter and maybe do some tests on her. Maybe. Might happen. And also, looming in the horizon is Stephen friggin' Bauer. He plays Jack. Stephen Bauer, you might know him as in Scarface, as Al Pacino's right-hand man in Scarface. But Stephen Bauer as Jack. Jack is a former lover of Jenny's, and actually a former I don't want to get into how he was connected to Jenny, but ultimately he steps back into her life through a chance meeting. So Jenny might actually, who knows, she might be tempted with cheating on Carter with this guy Jack. So there might be possible adultery, and Carter, as a child psychologist, might be really interested in his daughter way too much. And that's just like a little skim off the top, because ultimately Raising Cain is, what would you say, Eric Holmes? What else can we say about Raising Cain? Is it a murderous story? Is it what can we not spoil? What do you think?
I don't know how you'd spoil this one, because even the characters technically don't know what's going on. But I will say that I could see why this is your favorite movie, your favorite De Palma movie. And it's not my favorite, but it's definitely up there. John Lithgow's performance is, he's great. Duh, it's John Lithgow. Obviously, he's great, but in this, he's really, really good. This has some issues that might not play today with the mental health issue thing that we mentioned earlier,
Sure.
But this one is it's more playing on a trope, and that's the point of the movie. So I think this one's a little less egregious than Dress to Kill, for example.
I agree, yeah.
But yeah, John, it's weird because I see John Lithgow as the main character, but then he's got his other personalities. And I keep wanting to say, who's the guy that plays his twin? Oh yeah, it's the same guy. Like his characters are so well defined. Similar to Split with James McAvoy.
Sure.
Like he really commits to all his characters that he plays, and they come off as actual characters. Like they all have wants and needs and so on and so forth. But yeah, his little evil twin brother, he was fun where he sees
Cain, the bad brother of Cain.
I guess Raising Cain. But where he sees his wife and is that Stephen Bauer,
Jack, the other guy. Yeah,
and he sees them. He sees his coat, checks the keys. I was like, I got some ideas. I'm like, ooh, Cain, let's see what wonderful ideas you have. And it just kind of sets up this whole kind of like he sets up this whole murder mystery against them or not murder mystery, but sets him up to make it look like he murdered someone, and it seems like that's what the movie's going to be. Oh, he's going to, but then the cops find out right away, and then I don't know. It just goes in so many weird directions, and there's so many like little cool plots and cool scenes that kind of are kind of almost short stories in and of themselves.
Sure.
And then it gets to the end, and I don't think I understood the end.
Oh,
because so he has split personality. This isn't a spoiler. This is just what it is. But there's a split personality, but at the end it gets ambiguous. It almost feels like one of the personalities is him, and one of the personalities is also really there because of the geography of where the characters are.
Yeah.
Because it kind of has it doesn't have the same twist as High Tension, but it has that same kind of thing where, wait a second, okay, so if you're you and this other person's doing these things, you can't both be in the same place affecting the world around you, but they do.
So one of those characters might actually be a character. That's what you're kind of wondering. Yeah.
Well, Bruce, should we answer that question? What do you think? Do you want to answer that question?
I don't think I would say.
Okay, good.
I would leave it.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say this to you, Eric. Okay, we're gonna talk about that after we're done with this episode taping. And the reason why I'm saying this is I've seen maybe Raising Cain several times. Okay, I loved it back in '92 because everyone crapped on the movie. Okay, it bombed. I ended up watching it on DVD, loved it, and then maybe over the years I'd seen it a couple times. Towards the end of the movie that you mentioned, I had always thought that the final moment of that movie was one thing, a very surreal, cool, horror tropey, thriller type of ending, kind of like Carrie, without giving too much away. And it was a De Palma situation. But then I realized this is how awesome De Palma is. After rewatching it, I actually have a clear answer to what happened at the end. And we're going to talk about that after we record. And I can't believe I missed. Remember when we said, when De Palma says the camera, again, I said, I'm going to say it again, camera lies 24 frames per second. Sometimes we do miss certain shots or sequences in Raising Cain. And unfortunately, I missed out on that the first couple of times. Maybe I was so in love with the final sequence. I can't believe I missed out on that. And I go, what the heck? Speaking of which, Bruce, you reviewed this several weeks ago. I feel bad about not watching the new director's cut, which is supposedly which is now I think out on Shout Factory. Shout Factory, you can actually watch the original movie and then the director's cut, which De Palma didn't actually create himself. It was some other.
That was my understanding. It was like a fan cut, but it was based on some interviews that De Palma had given. Now, once again, I'm just basing this off what I saw. That De Palma had mentioned certain areas of towards the front half of the movie that he would have cut a little differently, he said. Although I don't really know why after watching it. I'm kind of curious what it is. I haven't seen it either. So I'm kind of curious how it changes it. I can definitely see how you could reorder the beginning some, but I kind of like the kind of weird dream logic and craziness of this movie all the way around.
That's right. Dream logic. That's you could apply that dream logic to Femme Fatale as well. Those are two. Yeah.
This one, now, one thing I want to mention, I think is sort of special about this movie is that we already mentioned, we'll keep mentioned again, Lithgow is just unleashed to just have so much fun. I mean, he is not playing these characters subtly. He's playing them nice and broad because the feeling of this movie is almost like, I almost feel like they said to, so, we'll go back to David Lynch again. Sorry to do this, but so David Lynch was like challenged, you can't make a, rated G movie. And, then he made a Straight Story and it's still David Lynch and it's a great movie.
Beautiful film.
I almost feel like they said, De Palma, you could never make a Lifetime movie. He said, oh yeah, you watch what my Lifetime movie is going to be. And that's almost, if you think about it, it's almost the kind of like melodramatic plot that you might have in like a Lifetime movie, but it's so De Palma'd up that it becomes this insane monster creation, and it's hilarious a lot of the time. It's thrilling at times. It's melodramatic, on and off. It's twisted and strange.
The plot construction, you got to give him credit. I mean,
oh yeah,
so underrated. The way.
Oh yeah, and it's got you know, it's got a little bit of Hitchcock in there. He has the thing sinking into the water and then stopping and then sinking the rest of the way. So he's got a psycho moment in there.
Yeah,
I mean, he does it all, but just the wild card of the plot craziness, and then Lithgow's performance. I mean, the first time you see Kane pop in the window of that car, and that little sequence progresses, and he says, like, the two guys are riding the bikes towards him, and he's like, you know, kiss her or whatever. And I was like, that whole scene, it's just like, it's almost like it's like the devil on the shoulder. It's so over the top, and it's so fun, and
and offensive, by the way, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we should probably do have a blanket statement. I mean, male gaze and De Palma,
of course.
Yeah,
yes,
good Lord.
Yes, yeah. Not time and place. This is De Palma is definitely a male gaze type of filmmaker.
Times 10. But I mean,
yeah,
take that
times 100.
Yeah, but I mean, this is just it's its own animal, and it's a ton of fun. And I'm curious to see what you say about the end, because I'm kind of with Eric on this one. I don't know if I have it fully decoded. I haven't seen it enough, I don't think.
Okay. Well, I think it's for me, it's a pretty simple. It speaks more to my ignorance of watching Raising Cain, but we'll talk about that towards when we stop recording. Eric Holmes, did you wonder if Kane and Carter, obviously they're the same person. They're in the body of John Lithgow. And without giving too much away, I thought one of the coolest parts was, did you ever think that Dr. Nix, who was the father of Carter and Kane, were you wondering if maybe he might be a figment of he might have been another personality? Or did that ever enter in your head? Or did you think, he has to be a real person?
I just assumed it was a personality, and then it got to the point where I wasn't sure.
Excellent.
So I have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I was going to mention, though, was talking about Raising Cain. I almost mentioned the part that I really liked, where the girl escapes the place, and then they chase, and then there's that car wreck, and I'm like, no, wait, that was from The Fury. And then I was thinking, but no, wait, the part where Lithgow is like outside the bathroom with the wait, no, that's Dress to Kill. And so now
that's
I'm
so
like,
awesome,
because watching all these De Palma movies, I got like all these movies kind of mixed up as one movie in my head, and I'm wondering if there's a De Palma verse, like kind of a soft De Palma verse, where a lot of these stories might be happening at the same time, because he's so like the ones, at least the ones he's written, they're so meticulous in all the things that are set up. I wonder if you can make like just take like a bunch of De Palma movies and do like a De Palma cut, where you take scenes from different movies and kind of Christopher Nolan them together.
Yeah.
To make like one giant De Palma movie where all these things are happening at the same time and just barely missing each other.
Yeah.
And also, well, you have like besides the De Palma-isms, he also has similar backgrounds. Like you have the multi-level atrium shows up in a lot of his movies. Like similar backgrounds show up in a lot of his movies. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of these characters are like just like right around the corner doing their own movie, and they haven't quite made their way into the one you're watching. I
wonder if something that bothers people about these movies too, is that I just thought of this when you're talking about it, is how he's so intricate and precise in the set pieces he creates, that it kind of creates a cognitive dissonance with the incredible, like, kind of loosey-goosey nature of the narratives. Because it's like those two might kind of really we have to kind of understand that, because I feel like that it might, for people not understanding, but like, well, this is so precise and I can understand the set piece. It's so clear, but yet this plot is kind of like, whoa, it's kind of swirling around and doing crazy stuff. I wonder if that kind of throws people off sometimes.
Well, that's a great thing about cognitive dissonance. I was reading some articles and just listening to the podcast, and they were saying, and De Palma even says this. He says, so what's interesting about his movies is sometimes he'll go to one of the preview screenings, and he'll see people hooting and hollering and loving it and having a great time. And then when there's an actual reaction at the end, give your reaction, they'll pan it. And he said he has a feeling that sometimes people don't want to say they enjoy his movies. And I was listening to other podcasters saying the same thing. Like, you know what? I was at a screening for Passion, this movie he did with Noomi Rapace and Rachel McAdams, released in 2012. And he was saying, yeah, I was at a screening. Everyone was loving it. And at the end, everyone wrote bad reviews about Passion. And I think he says some people don't want to admit that they really enjoy certain Brian De Palma films, especially something like a Raising Cain. And but I'm going to tell you guys the biggest reason why I love Raising Cain. And this goes to what you were saying, Bruce, a couple of weeks ago. There's a lot of great shots in this movie. I guess we've talked about split screen, split diopters, POV shots, all the stuff, the visual stuff, right? Eric, all the stuff. When you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, there's in Raising Cain, there's an actress, Frances Sternhagen. She plays Dr. Waldheim. Dr. Waldheim is a person who supposedly knows how to get to this child psychologist, this Carter. She knows the backstory about Carter and his father, whether his father is real or not. Let's just leave that mystery out there. But Dr. Waldheim, she comes in towards the middle part of the movie. She comes into the police station, and she's the missing link who can unravel whether Carter is sane or not, whether he's the killer or not. And what ends up being what could have been some kind of exposition dump in, let's say, a room where she's talking to the cops. One of them, played by Greg Henry, plays one of the cops.
Yep.
And Tom Bauer is the other cop. Instead of, I would say 9 out of 10 directors would have put that scene in a room, cut back and forth, use coverage, maybe have a God's POV shot at the most, or maybe make the scene a little less coveragey. Maybe let the scene play on with a close up. But the bottom line is De Palma decides to make this nonsensical, like you said, the walk and talk for about several minutes. There is no rhyme or reason. They just, this doctor, they just wanted to show her around the police station and the whole area, and they just wanted to walk and talk. And it was just this. Oh,
the point of that I love too. The point of that not walk and talk is, and I bet you like it too. It's when they come to the stairs and the camera tilts and goes down the stairs with them.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And I was like,
what? What are you doing? But it's not a oneer, but it makes you realize that, wow, this is a boring part of the movie where they're explaining everything, but De Palma wants our eyes to be lured in, to continue to be lured into the story. And that's why I love De Palma the most. He will take a boring dinner sequence or a boring walk and talk sequence and turn it into something possibly not operatic, but close to that. And I think with all the visual stuff, he really puts a lot of effort into even the most mundane of scenes. And that's why I love Brian De Palma so much. Raising Cain, for me, again, after rewatching this movie, I love it even more. It's one of those movies. Yes, Carlito's Way. Can you guys name what are some movies that are better logically than Raising Cain? I would say Carlito's Way, Casualties of War, Scarface, Mission Impossible,
Untouchables.
Untouchables. Yeah. Eric, you got some? The Fury. You like The Fury better, right?
I'd probably put this on the same level as Fury.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you, man. That's awesome.
My favorites of his are Blowout.
Yeah.
And Snake Eyes has to be up there.
Wow, Snake Eyes.
I didn't love the end of Snake Eyes, but everything leading up to the end was, I was all about Snake Eyes.
And I've told you this before, right?
And then of course Carlito's Way. But
he had a different ending, right?
Yeah, I told you. Yeah, I told you this, right, Eric? I asked Carla Gugino in one of the press junkets. I asked her about the ending of Snake Eyes. They spent millions of dollars on a hurricane sequence that never came, right? That was shot and they had to scrap it, and they lost millions of dollars on that VFX shot. But yeah, so that's it. That's so cool that you said you did not like the ending, but
Yeah.
they scrapped that ending, that hurricane sequence.
Yeah, everything about Snake Eyes is like so meticulous, like everything else he did, and the ending is. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but from what I remember, it's the, haha, I'm the bad guy, and here was my plan all along. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
And again,
it just, yeah, it just then didn't land, but Snake Eyes is pretty dope most of the way through. And then yeah, Carlito's Way.
here's the good news. We love
You want to
Carlito.
die? You think you're big time? Buddy, you're going to fucking die big time.
You're gonna die big time. Or what is it? The cat's in the bag, the bag's in the river.
That was that was also in the cat's bag in
Sweet Smell of Success. Which one?
No, Femme Fatale. There, I think. Okay, now I get these confused, but cats. So he
in the
says
very beginning when he's
and
giving her
bag-
the instructions.
Oh,
Yeah, it says the cat's in the bag, and then now I want to watch the rest of his movies and see how many times they say. Maybe that's a secret. Every De Palma movie where it says cats in the bag somewhere, that's a clue that that's a movie that's part of the De Palma verse.
the De Palma verse. That's so very, very cool. Yeah. So here's the good news. Raising Cain, very short movie. I forget. It's like a 90-some minute movie. Very short movie, and it's streaming on Netflix. Listeners, high recommend for me. Eric, you have final things to say on Raising Cain? Final comment? Is it a high recommend for you? Or
Yes, and dude, John Lithgow's so good. You mentioned the doctor lady, and that's where he turns into. Was it Maggie, something like that?
Oh, no.
yeah.
He doesn't.
He
He
turns into a
doesn't
girl.
say any. He almost says nothing. It's all just voiceless
Margot.
acting. Margot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, "Did he do this? What did you do?"
Yep. A lot of.
And I'll leave it there. But dude, when you started talking about her, and then I started thinking about John Lithgow doing that part, I was like, "Oh God, he's so fucking good for this."
So obviously, Bruce, we know it's a pretty good recommend. With any caveats, like you said, like you have to be. Do you
It's
have to
the same caveat. I mean, just knowing this, what the style is going to be. If you go in thinking it's going to be like a grounded, serious drama thriller, you're gonna think it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like you have to kind of understand. But I mean, even if you think that, undeniably you're gonna have fun watching Lithgow. Even if you're like, oh, this is crazy, but Lithgow, I mean, how can you? I mean, he's just awesome. You get like 5 performances for the price of 1. I mean, how can you go wrong? And I think it's way more fun than Split.
Oh yeah,
Like, a billion times more fun than Split.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so Brian De Palma, we love. Oh, and Eric, by the way, I did love Split too, but maybe we'll table an M Night episode down the road. But Brian De Palma, I'm glad we are done with Brian De Palma. Thank goodness we went with this episode without saying one darn word about Bonfire of the Vanities. Thank goodness for that. By the way, Bonfire of the Vanities, a really cool opening shot, but that's it. So yeah, so that's it. Anything else we want to say, Bruce? Anything you want to say about Brian before we get out of here?
Oh, Brian De Palma. I think what I said, I don't remember if I said it in this one or if I said it in our actual pod, but I feel like he definitely is somebody that benefits by going back, especially if it's something you thought like, well, that was okay, or it didn't really hit me. You know, give it 10 years or so when you're old like me, and
like me,
give it a try. You might be pleasantly surprised. I think his movies age well because his techniques are so solid throughout his entire career that you kind of it's like they go past being dated to being fresh again because he has such a strong style. That would be my words.
And I'll be honest with you guys, we have a huge collection of movies, and Brian De Palma is the only director I can just pull out physical media stuff, play it, and I'll just have it on loop. So he's one of those, even more than Hitchcock. So he's my, obviously Albert Hitchcock is a better filmmaker, with his body of work. But I love De Palma so much. I can just watch his stuff. I don't know if you'll ever watch Eric Holmes. I don't know if you'll ever rewatch The Black Dahlia, but maybe months down the road, maybe we'll have to do a Black Dahlia look
I
because
definitely will. I
yeah.
was going to try to get to it this week, and I couldn't do it. But yeah, I want to revisit that one. I did
Okay.
like that one the first time I saw it.
Okay, cool. Well, that is our Brian De Palma segment. Eric Holmes, you want to lead us out with anything? Anything smart? Anything cool?
We've talked a lot about Brian De Palma over the weeks, and all these movies are, like I said, the De Palma verse. They all kind of mesh together, and I'm really liking this world we've been living in. I would say go back, listen to past episodes, mark the movies we watched, and then watch those because it's not, I guess, not always a fun world to live in, but it's definitely an interesting one. And yeah, you could definitely go down a De Palma rabbit hole for sure.
All right, guys. With that said, I'm gonna just rehash that Raising Cain Femme Fatale phrase. First of all, happy movie watching. Hope you have a great week watching movies, folks. But remember, the cat's in the bag, and the bag's in the river with a De Palma split diopter, split screen POV shot. We're out.